Good job. So this week's portion is Parshas Shoftim. I'd like to focus on one section and specifically on one phrase in the portion that deals with rabbinic authority. And it says, Lo sasa l'cha min hadavar, you should not stray from that thing, asher yagidu l'cha, which they will tell you, yamin usmol, either to the right or to the left. And anyone who's familiar with rabbinic Judaism, the Talmud knows that there's a wide array of opinions and discussions and debates. And up until this day, any particular point has many different points of view that are promoted by different rabbinic authorities. But yet here it tells you that when there's a decision made by the higher court, by the Sanhedrin, you shouldn't stray either to the right or to the left. In other words, it seems to be giving a certain infallibility to the rabbis and their authority, and the court and their authority, to be more specific. And Rashi brings a medrash that says, what does it mean to the right or to the left? Even if they tell you, al yamin shu small, val small shu yamin, even if they tell you that your right is left and your left is right, you have to follow them. There's another version of this medrash which says, even if they tell you that which appears to be your right, that it's left, or appears to be your left, that it's right, you have to listen to them. And there seems to be a difference in the wording of this medrash, which has a lot of meaning. And that is that the first way I suggested, it's saying that no matter what they tell you, even if they tell you to go the wrong direction, even if they tell you what's objectively right is left, or objectively left is right, you have to follow exactly what they say. The second version is saying only what appears to be right. In other words, the rabbis are always right. The authorities and their dictates on halacha and Jewish law are always perfect, assuming they have almost a direct line from the divine to know what is correct. And therefore, even though you think that what's right is right and left is left, it might just be appearing to you, that might be your perception, but really that's not the truth. The other opinion seems to be saying, no, you have to listen even when there's a mistake. And again, there's different ways, there are different opinions, just like there's opinions about everything, how to interpret this. And the one opinion is that, they always have Ruach HaKodesh, they have divine inspiration. And many like to think that it's talking about all rabbis have divine inspiration, but when you look in the context of the Torah, it's talking about the main court, and that's the way it's generally understood. It's talking about the Sanhedrin. There was a group of authorities, of scholars who would sit in the temple, 71 authorities, and they would, anything which came to them, any problem in Jewish law that came to them, they would make a decision, and nobody could stray from their opinion, from their decision. And therefore, some would say that, that Sanhedrin does have Ruach HaKodesh, they have divine inspiration. But the truth is that's a problem, because there are passages in the Torah which talk about what happens if the Sanhedrin makes a mistake in Jewish law. They have to bring a certain offering as an atonement. So it's understood from that they could make a mistake. And the simple understanding really is that, of course, anyone can make a mistake. Certainly, a rabbi in a lower level or a lower court can make a mistake, and the law that you have to follow them no matter what might not even apply. But on a higher level, when you get to the Sanhedrin, we have to have a central authority. We have to make sure that there's no deviation from one community to another, because otherwise you have anarchy that develops. And therefore, even if they make a mistake, you still have to follow them. And although this might seem like something which really goes against the grain, that's true in secular law also. That at the end of the day, when a court makes a decision, and certainly the highest court of the land makes a decision, there's no arguing. Of course they make mistakes. Of course it's sometimes subjective and maybe even definitely wrong. But if you don't follow, there's anarchy. We need some kind of central authority. And as one of the commentaries, the Chinuch, actually says we assume that most of the time they're right. Now, if you're following an authority like a Supreme Court that makes mistakes day in and day out, you don't really have anything to you don't have a society that's following that which is correct, and the people will eventually rebel. We're assuming that the authorities that are in place and that are chosen by the people, however they're chosen, that a majority of the time, and more than a majority, you'd have to say a very large majority of the time, they're telling you that which is correct. And then hopefully, in the times when they make a mistake, it's not a terrible mistake, and we could still live by it, but we still have to follow. And we could take this even further and say that Maimonides, for example, says that even though there's decisions in halacha that we have to follow, that's only in action, not in what he calls machshava, not in thought. In other words, if I have an idea or or my notion and my theological ideas or my philosophy is different than the rabbinic authorities, that's okay. I have a right to have independent thought, which maybe in a modern sense is obvious. We're saying you could stray, but you can't act on it. In other words, action has to do with society at large. So though there's autonomy in the sense that we could think, we could voice our opinion, at the end of the day, when it comes to how to act and what the bottom line law is in the realm of action, we have to follow the central authority. So here we have in Judaism really this tension that exists all over, is personal autonomy versus authority. And although this sentence and this passage in the Torah seems to follow the stricter line of that we have to follow authority, we know that that really perhaps only existed in its purest sense when there was a central authority, when there was a Sanhedrin, when there was this high court sitting in the temple. And now that we don't have it, we have much more independence. And for example, different rabbis or different people can make decisions which might be different than other communities. And you could have what we call, other times I've quoted, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim, these and these are the words of the living God. There's different legitimate perspectives that exist, and you have a right to follow. I have a right to follow those opinions. And in the realm of thought, as I said, you could have any thought you want, but there is always that tension. And even in the realm of thought and ideas, or even community decisions, which are different than another community in the time when there's no temple, if we find ourselves too far apart, we will not really remain sort of a strong union. We won't be that Jewish people. We have to have some consensus that develops in general terms. If we want to be identified, if we want to go into a community in another city, another country, another continent, and feel comfortable that we're Jewish, we have to be able to have many things in common. And those things in common might be Jewish law, it might even be Jewish thought. So we always have this tension about how we can remain autonomous and have our independence, but yet have this authority which really directs us to have some kind of Torah outlook that is really directed and defined by a higher authority. And this is something we all struggle with on a daily basis: how much independence we have, and how much we're able to think on our own, and how much we're able to act on our own. And this is the tension that exists within Judaism. And personally, I believe that's a healthy tension. I think we have to strive for unity, but we have to retain our independence, we retain our autonomy. We have to be able to think on our own. And hopefully, when we think on our own, we're not just doing things for selfish reasons, but rather we always do something l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. As it says in the Ethics of Our Fathers, a machlokas, l'shem shamayim, a division, an argument, a dispute, which is for the sake of heaven, sofa l'hiskayim, will remain. In other words, they're both legitimate opinions. And if we think legitimately, if we try to think as objectively as possible and think of the greater good, then those opinions are ones which have validity and that we could live by. Good Shabbos.